Hey guys, Zane from the Infinite Jukebox here with another quick album review, and today I wanted to talk about the new Joey Valence and Brae record, Punk Tactics. Joey Valence and Brae are a duo unlike anyone else, if not for the fact that they were highly comparable to a number of other rap artists throughout history, but they're pretty fantastic, so that's pretty cool. The two rappers have spent a little over a year at this point really ramping up their hype via the release of a number of now hit viral singles, mainly the title track and Hula Gang, though that's not really all that they're limited to either. In fact, practically every song off this record was a single at some point or another with varying degrees of success. I digress. Their self aware, nerdy presences on this record and their general obvious love for the music that they make has allowed them to become these really lovable, everyman sort of figures within current alternative hip hop, and it's really exciting to see them finally debut with the Punk Tactics album. Above all else, the first thing that the casual listener will likely take away from Punk Tactics as a record is that it has a very old school hip hop feel about it. Not that that's a bad thing, it's just a very obvious thing. The most direct and easy to make connection here would obviously be the Beastie Boys, if not for their dorky personalities and Joey Valence's nasally delivery alone, but honestly their influences go much deeper than that. A lot of their flows are heavily inspired by a number of other classic hip-hop acts like Heavy D and the Boys, for example, and some of the more experimental moments feel adjacent to what artists like the Ultramagnetic MCs were doing in the late 80s throughout the early 90s. Meanwhile, the instrumentals here take a lot of notes from a variety of different electronic subgenres, such as drum and bass and breakbeat, which gives the entire record a very modernized feel about it, and also allows it to break the mold of nostalgia bait that it seems to initially come from upon first glance. More importantly, all of these different influences are often given their own individual moments to shine. The drum and bass number, Gumdrop, really does break things up nicely, not feeling out of place, but still having a very distinct, unique feel in the context of the album. Meanwhile, there's the surprisingly hardcore-esque Street Pizza, which is honestly probably one of my favorite songs off the record. It's easily the most aggressive thing that Joey Valence and Brae have ever done, and when you have songs like Punk Tactics, for example, that's really saying something. Again, the subtle variety of sounds that Punk Tactics pulls from really gives it a fairly modern feel despite a lot of the vintage tones being presented on this record. It's a nice, perfect balance of things, I would say. Influences aside, I really do think that Valence and Brae alike are both massive personalities behind the mic. They play off each other super well. Their energy is absolutely infectious. There's not a single moment on this record where they come across as remotely unenthused. They are obviously incredibly passionate about the work that they put out, and generally speaking, their bombastic style really highlights the charisma that both of them have in their own respective ways. The only criticism that I could really hand this album would be that there are times where the songwriting is maybe a little too pop culture reliant for its own good. Obviously, that does directly correlate with the nerdcore kind of aesthetics being presented here, but there are times where it's a bit overwhelming. For example, Hula Gang, which is still easily one of the best tracks off of the record, references Duran Duran, Zoo Pals, Power Rangers, A Tribe Called Quest, Initial D, Mario, and Spider-Man, among other things, in less than 3 minutes. Maybe that's a little much. Just a little bit too much. I do appreciate that the vast majority of the references being made throughout this record are for the sake of different punchlines, but a lot of those punchlines are just, I'm so X that I'm like, insert pop culture reference here. For example, there are times where it's like, I'm so powerful, I'm like a Super Saiyan, and it works in the context of the album because there's so much energy that you don't really think, hey, that's kind of been done on like every single song on this record almost, but nonetheless, it still manages to work out well. It's still a fun record, and honestly, the lyrical content is the least of your concern when listening to this. Plus, there's obviously a very earnest fandom for a lot of the different things that they're referencing throughout this record for the sake of those aforementioned punchlines, and you know what, that's something that never goes unnoticed in the writing. There's a lot of passion here. I just wish that maybe there's a little bit more variety in that regard. Punk Tactics may be a dork fest of epic proportions, but that's exactly what it's trying to be, and that's the exact appeal of it. Joey Valence and Brae aren't making quote-unquote thinking man's music, They're making energetic, loose music for people who want to listen to something that's just good. It's fun, it's upbeat, and at times it makes me wonder if these two are going to really go on to some of the greatest alternative records of the next couple of years. I genuinely think that Joey Valence and Brae, as a duo or even respectively solo, have a massive amount of potential to do wildly experimental, interesting things, and that this is hopefully only the beginning of that. There is the common criticism that the vast majority of this record was released as singles ahead of the album, thus leaving very little new material to really sink your teeth into if you've been keeping up with the duo, but as a whole, I have to say it's hard to deny how essential that Joey Valence and Brae make everything feel once again. Even if you have heard these songs before, I still would really recommend checking out the album itself. I'm going to give this record 3.5 stars out of 5. With that being said, that is the end of this quick album review. I've been Zane from the Infinite Jukebox. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.